American Airman. I am a warrior. I have answered my nation's call. I am an American Airman. My mission is to fly, fight, and win. I am an American Airman, wingman, leader, warrior. I will never leave an airman behind. I will never falter, and I will not fail.
I started the drum solo coming into that one a little early, but it still worked out. Welcome back to the Back and Forth, Air Force Recruiting Services only live stream. Today, we are doing all of the stuff that takes this kind of thing to happen. So that's cyber, right? So cyber operations in the Air Force is the team of people, the most advanced team in the world that takes all of the things that happen on the internet, in the cloud, and on computers, and keeps us safe and protected against threats all over the world, and also makes a ton of things happen. And we're going to jump into all of that stuff. As you know, the Air Force has jobs for pretty much every single thing you can think of. So to kick that concept off and to show you one of our cool new videos, I want to play something for you guys right now. It's called Click. Let's make it happen.
Looking for what comes next? For that moment when everything finally...
1 minute!
Whichever path you choose, it starts here.
All right. So with that, we get Click, right? So tons of different opportunities and really cool play on words for a lot of the things that you guys see there. Everything from clicking the mouse to clicking a camera, and that's like PA, and you've got mouse for cyber and admin and all those other really cool things. So I want to talk about cyber today, and I've got a couple of really cool guests that are going to be joining me, one of which who is a cyber operator and is going to help us kind of jump in deep and understand everything that it takes to be a cyber operator, what the Air Force is looking for, and to see if it's a good fit for somebody like you. So cyber is really cool because their job is to keep us safe in that domain that we don't really see, right? So you think about all the stuff that happens on the other side of a computer. Well, these are the men and women that make sure that everything stays the way it's supposed to stay as far as safety, making sure the security, and making sure that our enemies don't use those kind of resources against us. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you all to my first guest. This is Tech Sergeant Hawkins. He is joining us. Welcome to the show, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, as you said, my name is Tech Sergeant Nathaniel Hawkins. I hail from the state of Georgia, and I joined the Air Force back in 2012. Started off as a linguist, and I decided to make the jump over to cyber in 2017. And, well, here we are. I'm having a blast. So
that's awesome. Well, thank you for taking time to join us on the show today. I'm looking forward to kind of learning as much as I can in the short period of time we have about cyber. It's something that I find fascinating. And I've got a bunch of, cool, crazy questions for you. I got some hard questions for you too. So I'm curious to see how we're going to handle those. Yeah. So I got to ask though, this is going to harken back to the beginning days of the Back and Forth and our, one of our original founding members, but do you happen to be a Dogs fan?
Am I a Dogs fan? I think I'm a Dogs fan by virtue of moving to the States. So I'm originally from Germany. And when I moved to the States, I moved to Georgia. So my
so if
dad
you had to say
was
the thing that they say, what is that?
I don't think I can draw that line for you today, sir.
Oh no. Okay. Well, I was just saying go Dogs because that was the thing that he used to say. But that's for you. Retired Major Lane. He's out there. He's a alum and never let a show go by without slipping that in there. So every time in reference to Georgia or the Dogs comes up, we always try to throw that in there. So that's an homage to you, sir. Alrighty, let's get some things kicked off. I got some tricky questions for you, but before I jump into those, talk to me a little bit about how before Tech Sergeant Hawkins was a thing and before Airman Hawkins was a thing, what drew you to cyber in the first place? Like, what was it about cyber in the Air Force that made you say, that's something that I want to do?
Well, actually, so as I said, I moved to Georgia from Europe, and I graduated high school. I started college. And I thought to myself, well, I really want to keep doing this whole education thing and finish college. And I was majoring in computer science. And then I just kind of thought to myself, well, I think I can do this somewhere else too. So I decided to go take a look. My family's lineage is, military and things like that. So I decided to walk into a recruiter's office. He asked me a couple questions. I said, absolutely. He had me take a couple tests. Started off my career as a linguist. So I went through
Okay.
DLI for a while. And then, but my degree, my background has always been cyber operations or cybersecurity. So I figured I'd always end up here. And well, here I am. I decided to cross train in 2017, as I said, and I've been doing it since then, and I love it. So
That is awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. So yeah, that's pretty crazy though. Linguist first and then cyber. So
absolutely.
tell
Yes,
me
sir.
you're really smart without telling me you're really smart, because that is no joke. Getting into linguist school. What language did you
No,
do?
I did Russian, but I
Okay.
give it all up to the instructors. They were really great. My teammates, plenty of study sessions, and wouldn't have been able to do it without them. I'm just thankful that I was able to be given the opportunity to be there. So
Gotcha. That's awesome. Well, we're glad you're part of cyber now. That's really cool. And like I said, thanks for taking time to kind of talk this stuff through with us. All right, I'm going to jump in. When it comes to cyber operations, there is a consideration that's pretty sizable for ethical operations, right? So how does the Air Force balance those ethical frames when they're talking about offensive and defensive cyber operations?
all right, that's a great question. It's a loaded question, but it's a good one. So I think that one kind of starts in school, right? So when we start off in our tech training after basic training, we go through a pretty good school, a very difficult school at times, where some of the first blocks that we go through are, what are our left and right bounds? What are we allowed to do? What is right, and basically the difference between right and wrong. And then obviously we have the laws that we're governed by, the U.S. codes and different things like that. But at the end of
Sure.
the day, I mean, we're asked to prosecute enemies, all foreign and domestic, and whatever it takes. Again, within those ethical and legal bounds that we're taught, I say go for it.
Awesome. That's very cool. So it's a lot of training. There's a lot of reinforcement that happens before you're allowed to be,
Oh,
in that
100%.
operational landscape. So just
Yes.
making sure that everybody that's out there putting the fight out there for the U.S. and for the Air Force knows exactly what their left and right limits are. I like the way you said that. As you see at the bottom of the screen, this is going out for everybody out there joining us. Put a Q in the comments section before your question if you've got one. Later in the show, we will actually put your questions up on the screen, and I will ask our subject matter experts and our guests what the best answers for those things are, and you can get your questions answered right here. So hold on to those. You can be putting them in the entire time. We keep a bucket of them saved on the side, and then we'll put all the questions that we see coming across right up on the screen, and we'll take care of those later. So put a Q in the chat in front of your question, and we will get to those in like 20 minutes. All right, next question. I had to write these ones down to make sure I was like saying the right stuff. Saying the right stuff. Cyber is intense. Cyber is intense. Like there's a lot of things in the cyber community that there's not a lot of information out there, and that's by design, right? There's a lot of this stuff is, a lot of this stuff is sensitive stuff. And so I did a ton of research before this show because I needed to sound like I knew what I was talking about. And I'm really glad that I did, because I'm talking to a guy who is a crypto linguist, or is it crypto linguist or just linguist?
Yeah, you can use either one.
Cool.
Interchangeable.
I want to make sure that I'm not giving you a title. Like, is there a difference? But apparently there's not. So thank you. And then also went cyber. So I'm glad I brushed up on a little bit of homework before we did this one. So what does the Air Force do to make sure that its cyber operators are the absolute like bleeding edge of that sword? Is it training? What is it that we do to make sure that we have the best of the best?
Well, so I think something that the Air Force does really well is it gives us the opportunity for kind of like a constant feedback cycle. So they send us through training, it's very formalized and it's very by the book, and we have to follow certain things and check boxes so that we can effectively operate and legally operate. And then in those same training units, or sometimes in the units that we go to after we finish this training, we then also we get OJT, on the job training, things like that, that's where we really get that bleeding edge tech, because that's where we have different skill levels. We have civilians with us. We have interagency partners. We have contractors. We have a lot of different people who have a lot of different levels of experience that are able to pour into the younger. And by younger, of course, I mean people who are newer to the seat of being an operator, not necessarily by age or anything like that. But I think it really, we have a really good system where we present OJT in a way that I think is important to keep those skills honed and to keep those people
Sure.
coming back.
It sounds like you mentioned a bunch of other entities, right? So it sounds like a team effort. There's a lot of kind of focused energy on making sure that at the individual level, it sounds like people are as best prepared and best trained as they can be. And that's not something that you can get from one person just reading a book or studying. You've got this influence of experience from multiple, like you said, inter-operations, inter-agencies. There's tons of different resources that kind of pour into the individual that then creates them an opportunity to operate inside of a larger piece, right? So you have a bunch of highly trained, highly specialized individuals working together as a team. And that sounds to me like the definition of how to have, the best of the best is by making individuals the best and then having them operate on the best team. Very cool.
Oh no, that's absolutely right. Yeah.
So what's the Air Force's biggest challenge in ensuring that we have enough cyber operators? Like what are we doing to recruit and to retain our cyber operators?
So I think, I don't know, I wouldn't really call them challenges. I think it's just the nature of the beast, right? You have a large organization that has a lot of really, really good talent, but then you have the industry side of things that are also willing to offer, in most cases, those big paychecks to be able to kind of retain the talent or use whatever word you want. But at the end of the day, something a great leader of mine once told me is that those companies in most cases might be able to offer those big paychecks and they might be able to offer those, corner offices or, whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, you're only going to really be able to execute these kind of missions under the umbrella of the DoD and the government. So I think the big thing to remember is that while those companies, I'm sure, from what I understand, have amazing opportunities, and I don't necessarily discourage that, I just encourage people to understand that the Air Force and the other interagency partners and other branches are really the only place you're going to get this flavor of mission, and they're super cool. I know that sounds super cliche and super generic, but they are truly cool, and you meet some really cool people along the way.
Yeah, you also paint the picture of kind of twofold there. One, the opportunity to do this in the DoD means you get to serve your country at the same time that you get to do something in that flavor of this very specific skill set. That being said, with that experience, you become incredibly marketable to those outside industry agencies, right? So anybody who's on the civilian side of that probably looks extremely favorably at somebody who is applying to their company that has experience in Air Force cyber. And that's something to consider. One of the big things that we like to make sure that we talk about is Air Force is not necessarily always just like the thing you have to do for the rest of your life, right? So you can take advantage of the education, you can take advantage of the experience, and then take that back to your life after you retire and do it again in the civilian sector. And school could be completely paid for. Like you can go get your degrees, all your certifications, be highly marketable and high potential, especially for earnings on the civilian side. Get back out there and do that all over again. So I saw you throw the question up. I was on a rant. Go ahead. Sorry.
No worries. I was gonna add one more thing. I think the other important thing to remember is that while active duty is obviously a major slice of the pie, if you come in and you decide, okay, I did 4 years, I did 8 years, however much, and then you just decide maybe the full time is not the right thing for you. Just remember, we also have a total force here, right? So we have the reserves, we have the Guard, we have the civil service. So the skills within the government, they're not just going to go lost if you decide that you'd like to get out and go work for a different company, but you'd stay at reserves or Guard. I mean, you're still feeding into that total force structure that really makes the Air Force great, especially in cyber. It's a big thing, especially a lot of those people go to some of those interagency partners, and so they all stay in the family, and it's really good.
No, I love that. And I want to tell you guys, like, I wish I could say that I came up with that idea to have you say that. Like, that wasn't even scripted at all. Like, but I'm really glad that you said that, because that's a huge component of what we try to make sure that we are informing the public of, is that, and you said it, total force, right? So when your life changes, which it inevitably does, there are opportunities there that allow you to switch your military commitment with your life. And if you want to go to part-time, or if you want to stay in one place specifically, there is an opportunity there for you, whether that's active duty, whether that's guard, or whether that's reserve. And all three of those components all play a part in the cyber role. So that's something to seriously consider as well. So thank you very much for doing that. That made it like lined it up, just nailed it. And I hit my microphone. That was awesome. Okay. So next question. How does the Air Force blend cyber operations with like traditional military operations? So you think like boots on the ground, airplanes in the sky. What is that relationship between those elements of the Air Force and cyber? And how does that work?
So cyber integrates into every part of the warfighting terrain, I should say. I mean, really, we have planners sitting in all meetings that you can imagine. We have people who truly are whispering in the ears of the generals and really sitting up there in Congress and really going up to bat for us to be able to employ those emerging technologies that you mentioned, and to be able to really take those skill sets that we pound into our members at these different levels of school, and be able to employ them legally, ethically, safely, but also in those different echelons of government. And like I said, it's an interagency fight. It really is across all the branches of the military, and every branch of the military has their own flavor or how they operate their cyber force within within their ranks. And the greatest part about that is it is the joint community. So having that ability to reach across the aisle, or reach across pick up a phone and call my counterpart in the Army or the Navy or the Marine Corps. It's really helpful to see how other branches do those operations or conduct those operations, and then be able to also kind of maybe take some of those ideas, give some ideas, and really work together to make us very effective on the battlefield, air, land, sea, but also in cyber. So.
For sure. Yeah, you're just expounding out farther on that team mentality, right? You're starting to incorporate other branches, and that's huge. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so the next one is kind of, I think, maybe even a little sensitive. So I'll just throw it out there, but this is a tricky one. Okay. When it comes to things like cyber espionage, right, and surveillance, like that's when it gets into like the tricky stuff. That's when we have to be aware of how to protect ourselves from our adversaries when it comes to that stuff. What is the Air Force cyber community doing? What do the cyber operators do to be prepared for that? What do they do in response to that? Like, what happens when we are exposed to that kind of stuff?
Well, that's a great question, and it can open the door to a lot of deeper conversations. But
I'm sure
what I'll say for that is that the biggest thing is that it goes back to our training, right? So we start off in our training pipeline, and we really, really, really learn how to, as simply put, make the bad guys pay. So the biggest thing we want to do is we want to hold the right people accountable and responsible for their actions. And so ways to do that are going to be through our training. Ways to do that are going to be remembering that we need to stay within those left and right bounds. But I think the biggest thing is, again, as to your previous question, leveraging those interagency relationships and the joint warfighter mentality to where we can gather the information from other branches and kind of make the best assessed decision on how to prosecute this particular adversary. And again, going back to the Constitution, all enemies, foreign to domestic, and we just really harp on keeping them accountable and making sure that their actions are transparently shown to the world so that they hopefully can't do it again to someone else.
Gotcha. Solid answer. I'm swinging right into the next one then. Talk to me about like how emerging technologies like 5G and quantum computing and all this super fancy stuff that's coming out that we all see at the consumer level, like what impact is that having on cyber?
Well, it has a pretty big impact on cyber. The Air Force, as well as the other branches, they do a lot of research on emerging technologies. Again, to your earlier question, to kind of stay on the forefront of all these technologies that are coming out, how to defend, how to do different things. But as far as some of the crazier things that go on in cyber with those technologies, those are things that are better left for the training environments. And it's kind of, when I get asked questions like that, most of the time I just tell people I'm a truck driver, and it kind of turns them off with the question. So so that's where I'll go here. I'm a truck driver.
Okay. No, I got it. I love it. It's like a little bit of if you know, you know, and if you don't, you can join
It's true.
cyber and find out. No, I like that.
Exactly.
That's
And
cool.
exactly.
Very cool. Okay. Well, I'll just stick to truck driver. Okay. What is it? This one's a little easier. What is it that cyber is looking for? What is the Air Force looking for in its next generation of cyber operators? Like, what is a quality that the Air Force is looking for in the next generation of our cyber guys?
Honestly, I think it just goes for the entire Air Force, right? I think but specifically even the cyber domain, we're just looking for people who want to be here. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, we have people that could probably do really well in tests. We have people that could, get their certifications, go through school, blow some of our tests out of the water, and that's great. And we encourage everybody to apply no matter what. But at the end of the day, I think what the Air Force really wants is people who want to be here, people that a person like myself can look to the left or to the right, and I can say, okay, I trust that this person is going to have my back if something happens. I mean, I know coming from a cyber warfare operator guy, you're probably like, oh, you sit behind a computer and, you don't have a gun in your face, or, you're not on the battlefield every day. And while I understand where that kind of mentality might come from, at the end of the day, shifts can be grueling, and I mean, I know everybody pulls shifts, and travel is expected. Some people travel to places that they're not very forgiving environments. And in those cases, they are niche situations, but in those cases, I have to be able to rely on my wingmen left and right of me to be able to get me through some of those things. And so, like I said, I just want somebody who I know wants to be there, and I want somebody that I can kind of trust to execute the mission, no matter where they come from, no matter who they are. I just want to make sure that they know what they're doing, and yeah.
No, that's great. And once again, you're bringing it back to teamwork. You're talking about the left and the right, those airmen that are on your left and your right. And yeah, I mean, regardless of what your day-to-day job is, whether or not you're boots on the sand, doing your job downrange in theater, or whether your job is to man a console and keep track of, details and information that your job is to keep track of. When you're the best of the best, it's hard to operate at that level. So knowing that you've got that team around you can make all the difference in the world. So anybody out there who's looking at potentially joining the Air Force, you need to go to airforce.com and you need to click on the Find a Recruiter or the Recruiter Locator. You type in your zip code or your city, and it will actually show you a map of all of the recruiters that are closest to you. Well, we don't have to click on that right now because I have a recruiter that's already lined up here, and I would like to introduce Tech Sergeant Douglas to the show. Thanks for joining us, sir. Sergeant Douglas is our recruiter for all of our recruiting heavy questions when you guys get to the back and forth section of the show here in a few minutes. So thanks for joining us, sir. Why don't you take some time, introduce yourself, and tell us where you're at, what you're doing, and what you did before you were a recruiter.
Absolutely. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm Technical Sergeant Terrell Douglas. Originally, I'm from Connecticut. Currently, I'm stationed at Randolph, but I work remotely out of Lackland. So if any of you end up going to basic military training, feel free to stop by and say hi.
There you go. All right. It's hard to ignore. Talk to me about that wall behind you. That is a lot of shoes.
I didn't even realize there were shoes behind me. There's a couple. They're in cases. I may enjoy the occasional shoe purchase. I have a few
I can see that. Let's pop him back up to full screen because because there was some of them you can't even quite see. All right, so I am not a sneakerhead. All I see is I can see Adidas back there, but is there a specific thing you stick to, or is it just kind of I see some colors? What's
right.
What's what's really your shoe jam?
Whatever stands out to me. So we have some Yeezys, Jordans, some Adidas, some Reeboks.
Cool.
The bright pair is actually back in the day when the Air Force changed its policy on colors for your PT shoes. That was the first pair I purchased. So just a fun fact.
Well, I'm going to do a super cheesy transition here, but talk to me about what it was about the Air Force that stood out to you, why you decided to make that purchase.
So when it comes to the Air Force, I didn't have an extensive background before joining or military family, anything of that nature. However, when I started looking into the military, there was a common theme of people recommending the Air Force and talking about some of the amazing benefits it had. And once I started to do further research on my own, I decided that this could be a good opportunity for me. I didn't realize I would go past my first enlistment, but here I am 14 years later. Was able to do a lot of cool things within the Air Force, pursue degrees, and enjoy the beautiful benefits that we have to offer.
Very cool. I see. So you guys out there can see on Sergeant Hawkins' shoulder, it says exec. That talks about what his current job is. And then Sergeant Douglas, yours says POL. Talk to us about what POL is. That's a job that you had before you were a recruiter, right?
Absolutely. So I joined the Air Force in 2010, and my first AFSC, which is Air Force Specialty Code, was POL, which stands for Petroleum Oil Lubricants, which is most easily known as fuel. So everything from driving the fuel trucks to working in the fuels laboratory with the additives, to assessing the tanks that transport the fuel out to the flight line. That was what I did, and I loved every minute of it. If you know the motto of POL, you can say it at home.
There you go. Awesome.
I won't do it on air.
There you go. Well, thanks so much for taking time for us and being our subject matter expert on all things recruiting. And for anybody who has recruiting questions specifically that aren't necessarily cyber, we want to make sure we show you guys some love out there. So we made sure to, as you guys know, if you watch the show, we got to have a recruiter on here to represent, because while I work for recruiting, I'm still public affairs and that's their specialty. So we got to make sure we got those guys on the show with us. So without further ado, I'll give it one more shout out. Put a Q in the comment before your question in the chat, and then we will put them up on the screen and we will answer them. And we're going to start that right now. So let's go ahead and put the first question up there if we can. And how much of the operations, I'm going to guess this one's cyber, deal with emerging AI component? That is going to be Sergeant Hawkins. Take it away.
So I think that I'm not. That's an interesting question, and I think I might.
AI is still pretty new, right? Like
it is still pretty new. So I think this goes back to, again, one of the questions we kind of talked about. So the Air Force makes a lot of effort in trying to make sure, as we said, to stay ahead on emerging technologies. So in our formal training, in our day-to-day training that we have kind of at our workspaces, it's going to be more of what those individual roles require. Like if you work in an area or in a shop, as we call it, that is a little bit more heavy in researching quantum computing or AI or the implications that it has on day-to-day life or how it might be a threat to us, then that's going to be more in the wheelhouse of one of those offices. But it's not, in general, it's not something that I personally work with, no.
Yeah, it sounds like something probably more specialized, kind of that niche market where someone's going to spend a lot more time focusing on it. Right. And AI that's a hot topic, right? So we know you can see it on any one of your favorite social media platforms, whether it's a picture that's generated by AI or, people generating responses to things with AI. There's even video now. So definitely something that Air Force has got its eye on. We're keeping track of and making sure that we're out in front of as well. So let's see about the next one. What we got? Is cyber everything from says admins to hackers? I'm guessing system admins to hackers. Can you explain what you consider cyber?
So, okay, I'll take this one. So the big thing that we look at is we have in the Air Force, we have cyber and we have IT. So we see when the Air Force recently released their warrant officer program, and they have the cyber warrant officers and they have the IT warfighters, right? So cyber and IT, they work really closely hand in hand, and they definitely need each other. So the big thing that we remember about IT, or comm as it used to be called more traditionally, is these are the airmen that are going to be setting up your infrastructure. These are the airmen who are going to do that infrastructure maintenance. Make sure that when you have cyber that shows up, or when cyber is doing their operations, we can actually execute what we need to execute. So I think we work hand in hand. We can't really do one without the other. Right. And So I think it's really important to have both of those things delineated, but also remember that we do still work together as a team in that aspect.
Sure. Just like, fuels, right? So you're talking about that team aspect. You got to have somebody that can provide it, because if you got a truck or, a tank or a helicopter that needs fuel, it's not going to do much without the fuel guys doing their part. You have nothing to do with flying it, but everything to do with it flying, right? So
Absolutely.
Same thing when it comes to cyber and when it comes to IT is that cooperation. So in the grand scheme of things, yes, you could consider that an element, but it's two different systems that work together. You have the physical infrastructure, and then you have the operations that happen inside that infrastructure. So that's a really good job of like breaking those two things apart. And again, going back to teamwork, like, I think that's a common theme for you, really focusing on that team around you. So that's good to see. All right, let's see if we can get another one up on the screen. Assuming a good ASVAB score, this one's for Sergeant Douglas, I'll guarantee it, does having CompTIA certs, you're gonna have to tell me what that one is, like Security Plus, help someone get picked up for a cyber job? I was told my civilian experience wouldn't be considered in the selection process.
Okay.
Sergeant Douglas, why don't you
So-
take this one from the recruiting perspective?
Sounds great. So any additional certifications you have would be an asset to the Air Force. So although it may not guarantee selection for you in that position, it certainly helps. We want the best and the brightest. We want the most qualified individuals for these different positions. So if you have those certs, not only will they potentially assist you to lock in that job, but they can translate to additional rank. So depending on the level of certifications you have, there's a program we have in place that will give you rank anywhere from E2 all the way up to actually E4. So I would highly encourage you to bring those certifications to the table. Second part of the question, I believe they were asking if the Air Force pays for some of these additional, CompT certifications, and absolutely. So if you were to look up the Air Force Cool program, which is a credentialing online, I'm not entirely sure of the full acronym, but AF Cool, it will list a whole host of certifications that can be provided to you free of cost. So take advantage of not only the major benefits that everyone knows about the Air Force, but some of those lesser known benefits, such as the AF Cool program.
For sure. I want to kind of kick this back over to Sergeant Hawkins also. Question for you. How many people have you seen that you've worked with in cyber that had some form of experience or certifications before they joined?
So it's actually a really healthy mix. So it's really cool the way that it worked. So up until recently, the cyber career field in the Air Force was a retrain in only. And basically that just means that it's not something that you could come in, right, going through basic training through tech school and you go straight to the cyber job. So now it is that way now. And the great thing about it is that I had people who came from security forces that I knew. They had just started in their path on cyber, people from maintenance, people that came from the IT side of things that we were kind of just talking about. And I think the cool thing is they all bring really unique perspectives to the table. And we'll also get brand new perspectives when we have the initial accessions folks that come from basic training through the pipeline. They'll bring their own really unique flavor to the fight as well. So I hate to keep harping on it, but it really does build a really cohesive team when you have people who really think from all these different perspectives and can give all those perspectives kind of in a healthy mix. And so I think I've experienced a lot of different levels of experience. I have one of my really good friends. He came in with a computer science degree, and he was building programs, and he does that for one of our units now, kind of just helping out. And then I have a friend who never thought he would be cyber ever in his entire life. But then the moment he kind of went through the pipeline, he was just super excited, and it set him in a path where he's now doing some of the most awesome things that I've seen. And again, I think it just comes down to the different walks of life coming together and really being able to express themselves from a cyber perspective, and everybody kind of just listens and pays attention, and everybody's opinion is valuable in that sense. So.
Gotcha. So what I'm getting out of that is they're beneficial because you have the experience and you have kind of an understanding of the systems and stuff like that, but not necessary. While it can help you because it's something that's in that, in that same realm. And we know that we need that experience and we want to make sure that we're getting the best of the best. You don't necessarily have to have it because the Air Force can teach you, right? That's what for our tech school, they will send you to a tech school, which is like an accelerated college program or a technical school, and teach you how to do your job. So you don't necessarily have to have that experience when you join. We'll show you how to, but if you have it before you join, definitely bring that stuff to your recruiter because that's going to be very helpful in the Air Force's determination of whether or not you're a good fit. So take that stuff with you when you go talk to a recruiter for sure.
Yeah, and you actually also for the tech school that he was just talking about, you actually get college credits for that tech school. So that's a big thing too there. And as far as that last individual who asked the question about Security Plus is actually our baseline certification. So I would definitely take that to your recruiter and make sure that they know, hey, if you've got slots, this is really what I would like to do. I already have the baseline certification, which also saves you and the Air Force a little bit of time. So it helps definitely, but that's not to say that we don't take literally anybody who, again, like I said before, really wants to be here. And I mean, there's a little aptitude involved, sure, and that's with anything, right? But I think it's just mostly we want somebody who wants to be part of a team, and we want somebody who just really wants to be here and learn new things on a daily basis. So
awesome, very, very cool. All right, let's get another question up there. Keep flying through them. I see them stacking up in the bin. What does a typical day in cyber operations look like? This one's right back over to you, Sergeant Hawkins. What's a day in the life of the average cyber operator? Because I'm going to just do air quotes around average.
Well, that's a really subjective question. So I mean, it depends. So sometimes we might be ramping up for like an operation where we're going through like the entire planning process. We bring in a lot of different experts, a lot of different people, whether they're industry experts or whether they're folks that we have in uniform. And we sit down and we look at the problem set and we say, okay, how are we going to get at this today? And you might spend a whole day doing that. And then the next day that looks like, you go through drills, you practice, because you want to practice for the big operations and you want to make sure that you have everything right. And then in other areas, it's research and development. So we have a lot of those things. Some of the earlier questions we talked about for emerging technologies, you might find some of those emerging technologies in more of a research and development environment, just because, everybody is still learning a lot about these new emerging technologies. And we're definitely on the forefront of the fight with that. It's just that there's obviously always a lot to learn. It's an ever-changing environment. And then you might have some people who are in various places in the world, supporting different places, supporting different operations, either remotely or also in person. So it's really it's a very difficult thing to describe an average day for a cyber operator, just as it is for a lot of other people who perform day-to-day operations. But I'd say it's a pretty good day, and it's not always 8 to 4. So just be ready, but it's exciting.
Gotcha. Okay. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, in a nutshell, explain to someone who doesn't know what cyber is, what a cyber operator does. Like, what is your mission statement at its most foundational message?
Mission statement. So I'll go more into a basic explanation of it rather than just like a small statement. So I guess in a way, if you go home and you're sitting on your laptop and you push the power button, sometimes even before that, but the moment that power button turns on, that's where we're involved. So, and by that, what I mean is that as soon as the power hits all the components of your computer, they are now potentially vulnerable to a number of things that might already be there or might still come later, depending on, the overall security posture, I'll call it, of your computer. Now that's on the defensive side. So that's kind of more on the defensive side. Any kind of vulnerabilities, any kind of day-to-day.
Think like antivirus and like stuff like that. Things that could potentially be there. That's what I'm thinking.
In a way, but what we do is we more look for the holes in those types of protections. From like a larger scale picture. And then we put our brains to work and we sit in those rooms, like I talked about earlier, where we do our little planning strategies and we say, okay, let's think about this from the other side and how could people get in? And then
Gotcha.
that's kind of our bread and butter for the defensive side. And so it's a very, very interesting job. And if you enjoy very challenging problem sets where you have to think outside of the box almost on a daily basis, sometimes minute to minute, second to second, this is definitely the place for you. And I would encourage you to go talk to your recruiter if you're interested in something like this.
Very cool. That was a solid answer. I like that. All right, let's get another one up there. If I'm in the Army National Guard, can I get a transfer to Air Force as active duty? Sergeant Douglas, this one's literally got you written all over it.
Sounds good. So it is possible. It's easiest once you complete your current contract. From there, you would speak with the recruiter and try to transfer under the prior service program. However, it is also possible while currently in a contract for the Guard or for the Reserve to get a conditional release from your command to allow you to start that process earlier. So, really it's whatever's in the best interest of the Air Force. And if you do hear planes in the background, well,
Yep.
close to an Air Force base, so part of the life. But
There you go.
that would-
It's kind of a cool soundtrack, not going to lie.
I actually planned that.
Oh, did you?
That's
Nice.
a little flyby.
We've had them, man, I've had them before too, where you'll say something and just hear takes off. It's perfect. So nice job executing that one, planning the takeoff of the jet during your response. It's fantastic. Cool. So one of the other things that we like to make sure that we remember is if you're thinking about talking to a recruiter, if you're thinking about joining the Air Force, don't wait until a time frame. Don't wait until a date where you're like, okay, now it's time to start. Do it now. That way you can start the preparation, because there are going to be things that recruiter is going to need from you and need you to do that you may not have seen coming that will take you extra time. So be prepared and arm yourselves with as much information as you can by talking to that recruiter now and finding out what you're going to need to do, because you may be in a situation where your command is willing to let you go. They're willing to let you go active duty, because the understanding is we need all of the different components of the military filled, and the Air Force definitely needs that as well. So some of those commands are ready to release people to active duty, and some of them may want you to commit to the rest of that term and finish out your existing contract. And those are things that conversation can start by talking to your recruiter and kind of getting that thing started. So go talk to your recruiter like tomorrow, seriously, and ask all the questions and let them show you which way to get to yes, so we can get you in the active duty. All right, next question. Are you all also looking for cyber on the officer side? Fantastic question, and I'm really glad that you asked that. Sergeant Hawkins, this one's you, though.
Yes, sir. So we do look for officers on the cyber side as well. I am actually one of the people who are going to go be a cyber officer. I was selected for that, so I'll tell you firsthand knowledge. Oh no,
yeah,
just informational. But the yeah, so it's almost the same process. Obviously, more of from the recruiting side, but you need your bachelor's degree to be able to go through that kind of a pipeline. And then again, this is where that dichotomy exists. But if you would like to be a cyber effects officer, which is kind of more what I would do, but on the officer side. But there's also the IT officer side, where you do some more of the infrastructure and leading airmen that are installing the infrastructure and maintaining the infrastructure and administrating those systems. And then again, on the cyber side, same thing, just that I was talking about earlier. So really 17 in general, which is the career field identifier, is again split into two in a way. And then when you go down the cyber route, it's split even further down versus, offensive, defensive, different things like that. And that's all assessed when you go to school to determine kind of where the Air Force feels you would do the best at.
Nice. So simple answer. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely looking for officers in the cyber realm. Kicking back over to airforce.com, one of the things you can select is whether or not you want to go officer or whether you want to go enlisted. So you can actually specifically seek out recruiters who specialize in officer recruiting, and then you can also get guys that specifically wow, I'm losing my words, do enlisted sessions and enlisted recruitment. All right, let's get the next question up there so I can stop fumbling my words around. What is the difference between a cyber direct commission and a normal commission? That's also a really good question. I'll leave this one for Sergeant Douglas. Do you know the difference between the cyber direct commission?
Not personally. I think that Sergeant Hawkins may be a better fit for this question.
No worries. We'll kick it over to Sergeant Hawkins.
Oh, no problem. I can field it the best way I can. So the cyber direct commissioning program is kind of exactly what it sounds like. The Air Force looks at your industry experience. Say you're coming from a tech company, or you have you just have a lot of very niche experience on the cyber side. They're going to look at your record and they're going to assess at what rank can they bring you in. You might have the same thought process when you're looking at like a lawyer or a chaplain or a doctor. They look at their civilian experience and they say, okay, this is where we think you would come in as a rank. As far as the general accession process for the officers, you're coming in through OTS, which is also a normal selection process, but you're being assessed against multiple career fields. You can choose from multiple career fields, whereas the Cyber Direct Commissioning Program, you're strictly coming in as a 17, which is, again, the career field identifier for cyber or IT, depending on whether you go Delta and it's a separate boarding process that specifically looks at your cyber qualifications to decide where you might come in on the side, and it kind of guarantees you a commission that route. Of course, if you're selected on the board.
Sure. Okay. Very cool. Thank you. All right. Next question. Will you learn coding when in tech school? And if you do, what types of coding will you learn? Good question. Sergeant Hawkins, this one's you again.
Okay. So it's a surface level. So when you go through a tech school, it is a basic understanding, and it gets you into the door for understanding all the concepts that you need at a baseline level to become hopefully then a better cyber operator once you get to your units and you get your specialties and you go through your on-the-job training or your bigger qualifications. So at the schoolhouse itself, it's a lot of you'll go through scripting courses, Python, C++, different programming languages like that. And then when you get into your actual job, as in your operational side, when you go to your unit or you go to whatever location that you are stationed at after the fact, then those locations will have different specialties that you can train up for, where you might need to know a different scripting language or something like that. But Python's a pretty big one in tech school, and C++ as well for scripting. So
awesome. All the coding stuff. I kind of wanted, when I joined, I considered doing cyber or IT, kind of something in that realm, because I wanted to learn how to do all that stuff. I had an interest in it, and I had like the super, super baseline idea. But that was definitely one of my considerations. So all that stuff,
well,
I'm
there's
just kind
still
of like, oh man, there's still time.
Okay.
There's still time.
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, listen, you're not wrong. If I decided to do that, I mean, we definitely can. I just got to go, what's that thing? Talk to a recruiter, right? Next question. Hello, I am not going to try to say your name because I don't want to mess it up. My parents are from Africa and I speak Portuguese. Is it possible for me to apply? I'm super interested in being part of this family. Thank you. Well, thank you. And actually, that's not a name. That was because his name was in the actual title. I'm still not going to try to say it because I don't want to screw it up. So my apologies. Sergeant Douglas, this one's you.
Absolutely. So it is definitely possible for you to join as long as you have at least a 2-year INS card, also known as a green card, with at least 6 months left, or a 10-year card is acceptable. You do have to be able to speak and read in English, and there are a few other qualifications. So I would highly recommend going to the closest recruiter to you or calling in and getting a full list of all of the criteria. But usually the hardest thing to obtain is that 2-year card. So if you already have that, you're extremely close. So you can continue with the process.
There you go. All right. Next one. What can you tell us about the new warrant officers that are coming to the Air Force? Can I join as a warrant officer? Sergeant Douglas, I think this one might be you as well. I know it's a pretty new
Absolutely.
program for the Air Force. Yeah.
Correct. It is a very new program, and the purpose of it is to provide technical experts and reintroduce that warrant officer tier that the other branches have had for quite some time, especially when it comes to the cyber career fields. Many of these certifications need constant updates, and in order to stay on top of that, they created this tier so that they can be that SME, that subject matter expert in that area. And as far as joining and becoming a warrant officer directly, eventually that will be in the works. But currently, there is no immediate way to join as a warrant officer. However, the first graduating class is upcoming or may have just graduated. I'm not entirely sure, so I can't speak
Yeah,
exactly on
it's
that.
a brand new program. We just brought it in. And I've actually got kind of a question, and I'm not sure if anybody, if either of my guests can answer this question. Might just showcase my ignorance here, but I know that you can go from enlist to the warrant officer program. Can officers apply for that program as well?
So, based on my understanding of the actual verbiage, that is technically possible,
Okay.
but we have not seen it.
Okay, cool. I'm glad that there was a quick and easy answer to my question because nobody else asked. And I was like, I'm just curious now. Are they accepting, applications from both sides of the field, from the O's and the E's? So cool. Let's do the next question. Curious to know about how cyber operations differ between the Air Force and Space Force. Also, do you work with other branches on similar missions? Sergeant Hawkins.
So on this one, I will go back to my wonderful kind of joint force thinking there. So, like I said, every force in our joint environment, we bring a unique set of skills to the table. Not to sound like Liam Neeson too much, but we do bring a unique set of skills to the table. And so I think the important thing to remember is that we're each going to have our specialties. And as far as Space Force, they're a really new branch, and they definitely do bring great things to the fight. As far as the specifics, I'm not tracking 100%. That might be a question for some of our people in chat to answer a little bit more directly. But as far as in general, what I can speak to for the entire branches and the joint force as a whole, every force gets a piece of the pie, and every force has kind of the person that they bring to the table to eat that pie, so to speak, if that analogy hopefully makes sense to everybody.
I like to eat pie. This is a good one.
There you go. That's perfect. Right. That's great. So so the Air Force brings a specific set. The Space Force brings a specific set of expertise. The Marine Corps, the Army, the Navy, the Coast Guard brings a specific set to the table. So the interoperability is what's important here. So can we go down the rabbit holes and talk about how the Space Force specifically does this, the Air Force specifically does this? Absolutely, we could. But at the end of the day, that's not really what we like to present, especially to our airmen or to our guardians or to our Marines, soldiers,
Sure.
to our seamen. We don't really want to present it that way just because we want them to understand that we all bring something to the table. Profession of arms is a big thing in the Air Force, so we want to make sure everybody feels involved and that they have a buy-in on our operations. And so we keep it as joint as possible.
Nice. Lots of teamwork, right? And also, I'm really glad that that somebody was able to ask a question regarding Space Force, because I get to show off. I'm rocking my Space Force polo today. That's sweet. And hey, since Space Force is part of the Air Force, I was like, yeah, we're rocking the black one today because I don't know. I feel like cyber and Space Force are kind of like in that realm. I was like, today's a Space Force polo for sure. All right, next question. If I went through MEPS, qualified for everything, but didn't get the job that I wanted, and if I wait a little bit, do I have to go back through MEPS again to do testing, or is it good for 2 years? Sergeant Douglas.
Okay, I'll answer that question first with the last part. So, yes, your ASVAB test, aka Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, is good for 2 years. And when it comes to the job selection process within the Air Force, this kind of touches on what I stated earlier, which is the Air Force can't guarantee you any one specific job. So just keep that in mind as you go through the process. And the best analogy I can use for this is if you went to a major organization and you said, hey, I'd like to be a computer programmer. They would typically ask, do you have any experience? Do you have any licenses, certifications, degrees, etc.? And if you said no, well, they would let you know the door is over there. However, the Air Force is investing a lot into you and giving you the opportunity to, as long as you meet basic qualifications for these positions, you're going to be paid, you're going to be trained, you're going to gain all these, amazing benefits that we have throughout the Air Force. So I would highly encourage you to take a look at kind of the bigger picture of what the Air Force can offer. Someone that comes in with security forces can obtain a degree within cyber operations or a cyber related field, and then also cross train down the line or commission by going through OTS, officer training school. So look at the bigger picture. Although we can't guarantee you that one specific job, we can guarantee you all of these amazing benefits that are universal throughout all of the career fields.
Solid. Appreciate it. All right, let's do another one. We got time for probably like one or two more, so let's knock them out. Does cyber deploy, and what do they do on deployment? Sergeant Hawkins.
It's a fun one. So so realistically, if we think about it, anybody in the Air Force can deploy. And if you're talking about standard deployments in the Air Force, at least, other branches are different, of course, but it's usually a 6-month rotation. There are some spots in the Air Force, there even in cyber, where you can do those full-fledged, 6-month, sometimes even 12-month deployments. Those are a little bit more optional for you, more of an application process or a volunteer process. But standard operations on like a team level, like something that I used to do, is it's usually a matter of weeks. You usually go to different places in the world where you're needed, where support has been requested for a matter of weeks. And it's honestly, it's a lot of fun. And I don't say that because it's just like you hop on a plane and you travel. I mean, some of it is that, sure, but you're there to execute a mission. And the cool thing about that is that you do get to experience those cultures from wherever you're going. You do get to interact with people that have been there for a while and learn new things. And then at the end of the day, you get to prosecute the mission, which that's the important part of why you're there. And you get to defend what we hold dear every day. And does that take a little bit of time away from your family? For those of you who have families and friends and loved ones that you don't always want to be away from, it does, absolutely. But I will tell you, it is probably one of the most rewarding things you'll do, if not the most rewarding thing you'll do. Because, well, one, you'll have great stories to tell, the ones that you are allowed to tell. Otherwise, just tell everybody you're a truck driver, and they'll just have to deal with that, and that's okay too. Being a truck driver is okay too, because the point is what I referred to earlier: the profession of arms. Everybody has a job. Everybody does that job, and if everybody effectively executes that job, then everybody gets to come home and everybody gets to hug their loved ones at night. So that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I like the way you kind of tied that into the end. With what do you do when you are deployed as cyber? It sounds like you do the exact same thing you do when you're stateside. It's just the operational aspect. So instead of doing it as a drill, you're doing it for real. Right. And everybody remembers in like elementary school, you got fire drills, right? You go through the motions. That way, when it's time to actually do the job and do the thing, everyone kind of already knows what they're doing. So you're just doing what you've practiced in real life.
Right.
That's pretty cool.
It's those planning sessions in those dark rooms coming to fruition. It's really rewarding to see your work and your friends' work and your boss's work and your subordinates' work really, really flourish and execute the mission. And ultimately, like I said, prosecute the adversary. That's the most important part. So
love it. All right. We got time for one more if we can answer it super, super fast. Is there cyber jobs on the A&G side? 3, 2, 1. Everybody all at once? Yes. Perfect. That was a pretty easy one to do. Yeah, there's absolutely cyber jobs on all the different sides. Space Force has got them. Air Force has got them. Air Force Reserves has them. And Air National Guard has them. So there's 100% cyber operations opportunities on all those frontiers inside the Air Force total force plan.
plug for the civil service.
And civil service. There you go. All right. That takes us to the end of the show. Sergeant Hawkins, Sergeant Douglas, thank you both so very much for taking time out of your busy afternoons, spending some time with us and our audience out there on the internet, and answering questions in probably one of the coolest things that the Air Force Recruiting Services has going for us right now, because we get to talk directly to our audience, which is awesome. And without you guys, it would just be my silly face up here talking and not answering a whole lot of questions. So thank you so much for bringing your wealth of knowledge and experience and taking time, like I said. So with that, I bid you guys farewell. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, I appreciate
Pleasure
you
to be
having
here.
us on.
Thank you so much.
Stay dangerous.
Stay dangerous. Love it. All right. Thanks, guys. And everybody else out there, thank you so much for taking time out of your afternoons and joining us and hanging out with our tech sergeants and talking all things cyber and fitting some recruiting questions in there as well. You know, we appreciate you, and you can find us back here next month. It's going to be September 24th. That's Tuesday, September 24th at 2 p.m. Central Time. And next time we are talking all things SEER. Now, if you know what that is, you know that's going to be a good show. And if you don't know, it stands for Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape. And it's some of the coolest training that the Air Force has about how to make the best out of a really bad situation. So catch us next month, 2 o'clock, Tuesday, September 24th. And until then, we'll see you later.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode of The Back and Forth, brought to you by Headquarters Air Force Recruiting Service. It is a privilege for us to bring you all the information and insider insight into the exciting world of the United States Air Force. Remember, this show is all about you. We want to make sure we're providing you information and answers you need to make an informed decision about your future. So make sure to join us every other Tuesday with your questions, your feedback, and any ideas you have for future episodes. We are all ears. Don't forget to subscribe to our social media channels for even more exciting content. And also visit airforce.com for all the latest information on serving as a Total Force Airman. And with that, until next time, aim high.